Hi guys, welcome to a new video. My name is Laura from Pleiadian Healer at pleiadianhealer.com. And today I want to discuss a concept that I had already covered about 2 years ago on my other channel. And I believe the original video is still up somewhere on my Odyssey. But yeah, this concept is something I stumbled upon, I think like January 2021 or December 2020. It was all during the confusing years where you just didn't know what was really going to happen. Not that we really know now, but it's definitely less confusing than it was during like the initial lockdown phase, let's put it that way. So the topic is going to be stolen destiny. What is destiny theft and how could it affect our lives? So it's going to be a shorter video, but I really want to cover this concept because I find it so important to just point it out. And especially from 2020 on, I feel it's been affecting a lot of our lives, especially when I look at the younger generation, teenagers or even youngsters, like kids or 20-year-olds, like actual children, but also like kids, whatever you consider kids. So yeah, it's something that it really gets you thinking how much of our opportunities have been taken from us, right? So what is destiny theft? Okay, long story short, I personally think destiny and fate are matrix constructs. So I personally resonate more with the overall term opportunity theft. But just to go into the concept of destiny, so when I had the original video out, I had quoted a person who came up with the entire concept of stolen destiny and everything. And that's how I made my first video on it. But basically, according to that version, destiny is something that obviously it could change and we can change it too. So it's not just like, oh, fate and destiny, it's determined that you are supposed to become this and this person in this lifetime and that's it. I strongly do not believe that at all, because what I've seen so far from my own life and also other people's lives is you can turn your life around no matter at what point you are, how old you are, and how much in despair or in hope you are too. So I personally do believe destiny and fate are just similar to karma. They're these matrix constructs. Do they exist to a certain degree? Yes. And we certainly lived in a time, maybe that was a few thousand years ago, or even just a few hundred years ago, where our lives were more predetermined by those concepts. Let's put it that way. Because I do strongly believe in this lifetime, a lot of things are just not applying to the same extent that they did in the medieval ages, that they did in ancient Greece, and all of those timelines. Why is that? Because we are living in a time that's more fluid than ever, but we're also living in a time where AI wants to take a lot of things from us. And so, back in the day, we perhaps, in previous lifetimes and everything, we were more superstitious. We believed in a lot of things because there just wasn't the internet out there where we could connect with other like-minded souls and educate us a bit more, or kind of dig through these matrix deceptions and matrix concepts together. Those were the times where we would possibly be burned to the stake for being a witch or for believing in the supernatural and having certain superstitions that wouldn't fit into society and the societal timeline, right? So the stolen destiny concept is basically based on, okay, you came into this lifetime because you had a certain destiny to fulfill. That might have been true back in the day, which I still believe we can always turn things around into whatever path we want. But just to keep it simple, we're going to stick with the stolen destiny and destiny theft as the overall term. I kind of see it as, okay, we enter this lifetime, we have a few different pathways that we can take. Some people really, really, really do feel called to do certain things. Like some people who want to become a doctor, or especially the ones in the medical field, which I personally had never had that urge. I know I was in the medical field in a previous lifetime, so maybe I kind of fulfilled that urge in a previous lifetime. But people who have those strong urges and desires from an early age on, like when they're 16 years old, or even when they're just 6 years old, they know they want to be a certain something. You know, they want to become a doctor, they want to become a firefighter, they want to become a cop, or whatever it is they want to be. And it never changes throughout their life. I do feel there's a strong urge and soul destiny that they're maybe trying to fulfill. But for most of us, I believe there are certain paths that we can take, and those can change according to the people we meet, the places we move to, or the places our family, parents, etc. moves to when we're young, and also how we go about life. You know, if we have like a certain degree first, that's going to have a different pathway than if we have to, like if we have to do something else and wait 10 years until we have the financial opportunity to get that degree or whatever is required for the job. So there are so many different things that go into this. But in short, we have this unlimited potential out there. And the older we get, the more it kind of just narrows down, because we also have certain interests, right? Like when I was a teenager, I wasn't interested at all in painting or photography or any of that. That didn't come about until probably in my early 20s or whatever. And the reason it didn't come about was because I didn't live in a creative or inspiring environment or area at all. So it took, for me to develop that interest, it actually took moving to a city that inspired that artistic urge and desire and that path potential or destiny or whatever. And then it took another few years to actually go past all the limiting belief systems that family, society, teachers had put on me from an early age on. Oh, you can never make a living when you do art. Oh, you can never do this and that, and learn a real job, do it when you're retired, all those things, right? So it takes a whole lot to dig past through all of those things and become conscious and aware of why you think you're not good enough to fulfill it as a career, or why you have so many blockages in the way. And that takes a while, and it takes a very conscious effort. And a lot of people, especially when they're younger, they don't necessarily have that type of conscious effort and consciousness in their field, and there's no judging there. It's just something that I personally have observed in my own life and also other people's lives, right? There was this one woman who told me that once you reach 40, your personality really stabilizes, meaning you don't change nearly as much as you did up until the point until you turned 40. So that kind of makes a lot of sense to me, because there are a lot of changes we go through up until that age. And then after that, people tend to not change as much anymore. But it obviously depends on the person and what they want in their own life. So stolen destiny, what is destiny theft? In short, we have these unlimited paths and potentials. And the more we go through life, the more it narrows down. So we start off with, let's just say, 100 potentials, 100 paths that we can choose. Oh, today I want to become a vet, like, you know, like a veterinarian or a veterinarian assistant or whatever. And then the next day you want to become a firefighter, or you want to help out kids in Africa or whatever, right? So you have all these interests, all whatever. And with each day, the more you kind of express that, the more you meet people in your life, the more it kind of gets dimmed down or inspired. But most of the time, it kind of does get dimmed down a lot by the people in our environment. And so I do feel for most people, we have these certain interests and skill sets. Let's just stick to a few precise examples. Let's just say a person loved to play piano, and another person loved to write, you know, they want to become an author, a book writer, whatever. Another person loves painting, and then there's another person that loves dancing or acrobatics or whatever it is. And these are just random examples. But so this child who loves to play the piano, and they're very talented and skilled with it, they grew up in a very rural area. And this is before Zoom calls and all of that was around. But even with that, even with music, you kind of have to teach it in person to get the rhythm right and to get a few things right, at least from what I've heard from musicians who had troubles providing a service during the pandemic times, because they kind of want to do it in person to get like the right feeling for the music. So this child grows up in a rural area. They have this passion to become a piano player and to really take it to the next level, maybe even visit a music school, after they graduate or whatever. And then they turn like 12, 13 years old, and the piano teacher moves away because they have another job opportunity somewhere else. And because it's a rural area, no one replaces him immediately. So maybe it takes a year or two. And because the child is a teenager or whatever, they kind of lose interest fast, because teenagers are all about that, right? They try out a few things, but nothing's really cool enough. So if it's not cool, you're going to lose your interest. If you're going to be made fun of by your peers, you're going to lose your interest. At least that's how it is for a lot of teenagers. So the child, who was an amazing piano player or an amazing singer, an amazing musician for 6, 7 years of their life, they could have probably made something out of it. They could have maybe even worked for Carnegie Hall or whatever it is, like a huge institution. That pathway, that destiny, that opportunity kind of got shut down by where they were living, or rather where their parents were living, and for not really being reinforced to go somewhere else to take piano lessons, or there just not being any person to really teach them further, right? So that would be one example of stolen destiny or destiny theft. And this is not even like the viciousness of anyone around them. It's just there are certain things that happen in life, and we don't really have much control over that. We don't have control over where we live when we grow up. That's more on our parents moving there. We don't have much control over our piano teacher getting a different role somewhere else and deciding it pays more. They want to move there. So these are just things where the child doesn't have control over it, but had they actually pursued piano more, they would have become an excellent pianist and maybe made like an A class something somewhere in the opera or Carnegie Hall or whatever it is where they want to be, right? Doesn't even have to be anywhere here in the US, could have been anywhere in the world. So another one is just being more people oriented. And you see this a lot, especially with like a mother-child or mother-daughter relationship, when the mother becomes jealous of the beauty of their daughter because the mother turns older, maybe they go through menopause and all of that, and the daughter turns a certain age where men are noticing, boys are noticing, whatever, and the mother becomes so jealous of the youth of her daughter because she's kind of going through the opposite of it, just as an example, where she's really just forbidding a whole bunch of things. Like the daughter's not allowed to dress nicely, gets like the worst clothes. The daughter's not allowed to attend parties or go on dates. The daughter's basically a bit of a, like in the movie Cinderella, kind of like that person who cleans the floors and all of that, like the evil stepmother and the daughter. Now that's a bit of an extreme example, but it definitely exists. The jealousy between a parent and a child once they reach a certain age, that definitely exists. Also for like a son and a father, like the son just being stronger than the father or younger than the father, all of that. And obviously it's unhealthy relationships that are playing out. If there's a form of jealousy, a conscious parent would be like, okay, why am I experiencing this? Why am I feeling this? There's something I need to work through it. But as we all know, especially parents who kind of had children at a younger age, there's not a whole lot of conscious parenting going on because by societal expectations and standards, you're supposed to have kids because society expects you to have kids, not because you consciously want children, right? At least that's just how it was up until recently. Let's just be honest. And so I kind of find the parents that have their children a bit later in life have a very different relationship to their kids than the parents that had children younger. Now, there are great, amazing parents out there who had children when they're young, but most of the time, and this can also ring true for, you're 40 years old, you have a kid, and you can have a horrible relationship to your child. I mean, it goes at any point, but I just kind of find, and the more I observe this in public too, the more it kind of confirms it, that there's this unconscious parenting style, and then there's this very conscious parenting style where things are just being worked out. Whereas with the unconscious underlying problem parent style, which is pretty prevalent in a lot of countries, um, there's just all these issues that, it just turns into a toxic parent-child relationship eventually, or it just turns into an unhealthy something eventually, especially in teenagehood. So the stolen destiny, that would just be like a whole bunch of opportunities being shut down by your own parents or by relatives or by teachers too. That's another huge one. Teachers kind of paving the path. And for someone like me, because I grew up in Germany, we had a different school system. So and it's changed a lot since then too. Okay. But the school system that I grew up with specifically, and I actually saw how it ruined one of my sisters' past because of it, because the teacher hated my sister so much. And how it kind of, she wanted to put it onto, I had like another sibling, she wanted to put it on the other sibling and me too, but she was very unsuccessful with it. So the way it happened was a teacher had control. Let's just say you're 9 years old because you're in fourth grade in Germany. In fourth grade, you were supposed to go to a higher school. So here in the US, you have elementary school, middle school, and high school. In Germany, you would have, I guess, elementary school, and then you would have something called high school right away, which is where you kind of want, if your child is supposed to go to university, you want to get them in there. But then you also have two other schools. One is more for people who want an apprenticeship, and another one is just kind of like an in-between until 10th grade. And so if a teacher hates a child so much for whatever reason, you don't even need a reason, right? But, it could be karma playing out from a different lifetime or whatever it is, them just, once again, not being a very conscious teacher, them just kind of hating their job and whatever. If a teacher does not like a child and they decide to ruin a child's career or life path in that way, they can write them a recommendation for the lowest school option possible, instead of actually getting the child into the best school option possible, if that makes sense. And so it actually happened to one of my sisters, and I saw it play out in a weird way because she got a recommendation for a school she was not supposed to go to, and it kind of did set her back for a lot of years. I do have to say that. And now they changed the entire school system in Germany, where it's getting more and more generalized. So it's more like the general high school system that you have here in the US and other countries too. But back in the days, it was still a little bit different. And so I feel a lot of children's life paths were a bit ruined by just having this weird relationship to a teacher who didn't like them and them just writing them a weird recommendation. Anyhow, that would be another example of like destiny theft, right? And that's a huge one, because if you are at that age and you're supposed to really get the best opportunities out there, you're already living in a first world country. You're not living in a third world country where you don't have the education, but you're living in one of the best countries out there, right? Where education is readily available. In Germany, it's even free in that sense. And there's just this one person who hates you, and they kind of put you on that path and everything. What are you really going to do? Like back in the day, there wasn't much that could be done. Nowadays, parents would run to the principal and everything, but that's not really what you did, like a few decades ago. So that's a huge one, in my opinion, a big one. And these are just like real life examples. Like a few hundred years ago, it would have been with someone maybe chopping off your hand or your foot or something and ruining your life through that, right? But nowadays we kind of got to see it from a different perspective. So with destiny theft within a family, like with the mother-daughter relationship, the mother could be making sure that the daughter has a poor body image or can't get into uni or something like that, just really making her life a living hell. It could be the same for a father-daughter or father-son too. Parents can actually be the most destiny stealers out there. I do want to point that out, especially the ones that do unconscious parenting. They don't even know what they're doing and how it's affecting them. For example, if one parent gets the opportunity to move to a new place because they get a promotion or whatever, and that place would have been very intriguing for the family or the children. Let's just say they want to move from somewhere to Japan or Europe, or, you know, from the US to Europe, or whatever it is, or back to the US or whatever. Or like from a poorer country to a first world country, and then the mother steps in, or the other parent steps in. They're like, oh no, I don't want to rip our children out of this safe environment or whatever, but it actually would have been good for the kids to experience that. That's another one where I'm just like, okay, but the children would have probably had more opportunities in that country, maybe would have even learned a different language, would have made different types of friendships, different types of experiences. You will never know at this point because you kind of shut that life path down. And so in school, it's, you know, teachers giving bad grades because they don't like the student, failing a student, or like I said, with the different school systems, making sure that the student will never be able to experience the higher school system, just keeping them low because they don't like the student or whatever. Some people commented on my old video saying like they had a form of destiny theft when parts of their writings were burnt at an early age on, like a book or something they were writing, and they never recovered from that, meaning they were never able to get back into writing, or they were just so traumatized from it, right? So it can even turn into a full-on trauma somehow, where people stop expressing themselves, people stop dancing, people stop singing, people stop playing whatever the music instrument they were playing. And I keep mentioning like music instruments or singing or dancing because these are just the activities that you do as a kid. These are like the expressions that you have, which should be readily available to you when you live in a certain type of country, right? And like, I'm not saying if you live in a third world country, whatever, you definitely have these, but when you live in a first world country, you kind of should have some form of expression, but they're shutting that down now too, you know, through the inflation, through people just losing income and not wanting to invest that type of thing into their children for obvious reasons because they're stressed financially. And so it gets you thinking how the past, at this point, 3 years from 2020 on have been a major destiny theft and stolen destiny for especially the younger generation. If you just think about, you know, children who were supposed to go to an art school or art program, all of a sudden everything's through Zoom or online. People are forced to join social media or TikTok or get a desktop and laptop instead of just spending the time to express themselves creatively somehow else. You know, like parents are giving their babies iPads at this point because they're so annoyed when the baby screams. They don't know how to shut the baby down otherwise. So yeah, these are all major reasons for destiny theft. And I do think the past 3 years have shown how many destiny thefts have been committed, especially with people, you know, let's just say a parent was in a great career due to the entire fiasco and companies just doing poorly or not doing as well as they did before, and then firing a lot of people. All of a sudden this parent lost their job, and now what? You know, like this is another one. Like this parent was up for promotion or whatever, was supposed to actually earn more income, and all of a sudden they have no income. Or some people were like in a major career. Let's just take the performance industry. Some people were in a major dance career, whatever, were on Broadway for like 30 plus years. And now due to the entire restrictions and whatnot in all these cities that are still holding on to them for the performers, they have not been able to really do what they love or what they were destined to do. And you know, it's a soul path that they choose themselves from a very young age on, because when you're a performer, you usually choose that when you're very young, let's be honest. So yeah, a major destiny theft there for a lot of people for sure. And I'm pretty sure you can think of at least one example in your own life. These are just like a few examples that I could personally think of that I've seen in other people, or maybe in my own life, or just in general that came up in the original video. if you want to add to it, or if you want to add any thoughts to it, definitely feel free to do so. Now, people can always argue, yeah, but maybe it wasn't meant to be, and this and that. I kind of disagree with that. I see this as a major theme and concept, especially in the younger generation. I see it as for teenagers who are now really confined to the online world instead of experiencing a lot of things in person, instead of going to auditions, becoming an actor or whatever it is they wanted to become, right? Or maybe like acrobatics or performing in the Olympics, whatever it is they wanted to become. This is like a major roadblock in their pathway. And a lot of people are talking about, especially here where I am, oh, can we just erase the past 2 years? Like, let's just say someone's 50 years old. Oh, actually, I'm 48 years old because the past 2 years never really happened. It was like a standstill for the entire world. So people are really traumatized by what happened over these past few years. And it's having an influence on the arts, creativity, the way creativity is being expressed, and also how people see their opportunities. A lot of these younger people, teenagers, whatnot. I mean, you're talking about depression in that generation. I see that very strongly in my own relatives too. I have nieces and nephews who are teenagers or young adults at this point, and I see some of them being very depressed. I'm not going to lie. I definitely see that it's not as natural. Like, yeah, people were depressed back in the days when I was around too, but it's not the more natural type of depression you saw back then. It's really just because they were stuck in front of their devices for so long and they didn't really have any much of a social life or whatever. Like a screen's not going to replace talking to your best friend in school or talking to your best friend after school or whatever. It's just not going to happen. So major destiny theft, I feel, in that generation. Like, a lot of things were stolen, and I'm sure you can think of some examples too, and if you want, you can share them. Hope this video kind of helped you, and it's just another topic I personally wanted to share. All right, more videos to come. Thank you so much for your support, everything you do. Talk to you very soon. Bye, guys. Have a wonderful one.